Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast for founders, entrepreneurs, dreamers, and leaders navigating the journey of growth. In each episode, we get into the setbacks, the rebuilds, the pivots, and the lessons learned along the way. These are honest conversations with leaders who face challenges head on and found success in business and in life. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Michael Dodsworth. Michael is the founder and CEO of Fanfare, a platform built to fix the chaos behind high-stakes product launches. For nearly 2 decades, he's been in the room when ticket drops crashed, sneaker releases melted down, and brands faced public backlash in real time. Instead of commenting from the sidelines, he built solutions. Today, we're talking about what really happens when launches fail, what pressure reveals about leadership, and how to turn chaos into loyalty. Hi, Michael. How are you today?
I'm good. Good to meet you. How are you?
Nice to meet you. I'm great. I can't complain. Thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to get into this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, let's get right into it. So, you've spent 2 decades in high stakes product launches. What first pulled you into that world?
I think for me, it was live events, actually. So I've
Mm-hmm.
always been on the high scale demand side of things, but it's usually been in tech companies. So
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce, Optimizely, they both have these huge issues of scale. So everything you built at those companies, you had to think about how you were going to scale to millions of people on day one. But then I moved into live event ticketing. And as we've all found, when tickets go on sale, whether it's for Oasis, for Taylor Swift, those moments tend not to go very well for the vendor. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the environment that I found myself in. And this came from frustration, both as a consumer and on the vendor side, just feeling like there must be a better way for us to buy these things. Why am I sat in a queue for 6 hours, staring at multiple tabs and spinners? There must be a better
Mm-hmm.
way. And then seeing things on the other side of the fence, fires going off, just people frantically running around trying to get through that moment. And that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of the origin of getting into this world for me.
What made you stay? Because it sounds chaotic.
I mean, I like I like the high octane moments. I don't want it to be dull and flat.
Okay.
I like those spiky moments. And I think there's some real interesting challenges when you try and take on something like that. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
found at those early companies is like if you just have a kind of steadily growing traffic volume, like you can prepare for it, you can adjust, you can do all those things. But when you go from almost nothing to everything, to
Mm-hmm.
4 million people showing up all at once, there are some unique engineering challenges with that. There's some unique, interesting challenges around communication when you have an event like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of thrive in those moments, honestly. Yeah.
When a launch goes wrong, what actually breaks first? The technology, the team, or leadership?
It's a mixed bag, actually. I think even with the best leadership and management, you can still have the technology fail from underneath you just because it's an enormous thing that you're taking on. And sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
even if you feel like you've prepared adequately, something will happen. A bot will come in, there'll be a DDoS attack, and something will happen that your tech just can't deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But often it is just a lack of imagination and planning on the company side. Like
Mm-hmm.
you know that the Switch 2 is going on sale. You know what that's going to look like. There's going to be a ton of people piling into your to Best Buy, into Walmart uh, on day one, and you just didn't adequately prepare for it. So I think there's some lack of preparedness. There's also just a lack of tooling to help you through that moment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know that 4 billion people are going to show up. How do I, like, is my
Mm-hmm.
tech platform in a good state to deal with that? If it's not, how do I make it in a good place?
Yeah.
Like, I spent some time at Ticketmaster. The company I worked for was scooped up by Ticketmaster at the start of the pandemic. And one of the things you realize going to a company like that is it's hard for them to move in any direction. They just have so much technical and organizational debt that even if they could isolate one thing to fix, it's hard for them to move in with any pace to try and fix that. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but it is actually often just a lack of preparation.
So how can you prepare? What are some of the tools, the actions that companies can really focus on to minimize the risk?
Yeah, I think I'm going to obviously recommend Fanfare for this,
Yeah.
but just a tool that is able to orchestrate the whole thing end to end. We find brands tend to be flipping switches and dealing with things in that moment. So things need to go live for our VIPs at 9, and then everyone else
Mm,
needs to come in at 10. Like there's someone there frantically trying to move things around and do things correctly in that moment. And often that goes wrong or just doesn't go according to plan at the right time. And then just once you're in that moment, scaling up and scaling back down again, you're kind of at the mercy of the vendor that you're using. So you need to make
hmm.
sure that the vendor you're using or something sat in front of the vendor like Fanfare is able to spin up quickly enough to deal with that traffic when it comes.
So talk to me a little bit about how your tool, like the function of how it actually works and makes the improvements for the company using it.
Yeah, so this again came out of frustration on the vendor side.
Hmm.
Like people shouldn't be frantically flipping bits in the moment. I want to set up my Black Friday, my Cyber Monday whole process ahead of
Hmm.
time, and I want
Yeah.
something to manage it for me. So that's what Fanafare helps do for brands, and also just then that moment when the traffic comes, it's actually hitting a fanfare experience first. So
Mm,
we queue people up, we manage people in the wait list, we make sure people have an orderly entry into that process, and then we can meter people through to whatever's underneath at a reasonable rate for that service. So if it's 10 people a minute, if it's 100 people a minute, we can facilitate that for you. So we can take some of that heavy lifting away from you and from the vendor that you're using and run a fair and orderly process.
so why doesn't, like, let's just use, I'm not going to use any names, but like a large ticket seller, why don't they already do that?
I mean, there's again mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
Some organizational and technical debt that prevents them from doing that well.
Got it.
If Ticketmaster, you have to expect that when Taylor Swift goes on sale, it's going to be chaos.
It's going to
But
crash.
yeah, that you're going to probably crash. You're going to have more traffic than you expect. But we had Taylor Swift. We saw what happened there. It was
Hmm.
catastrophic for Ticketmaster and for Taylor Swift in that moment. And then a few months later, we have Oasis go on sale, and exactly the same thing happens. So they know it's a problem. They just don't move with any pace to fix it. And then just on the vendor side, if you're like a Shopify,
Hmm.
is there a strong incentive for you to fix this?
Yeah.
Because it's an enormous wave of traffic hitting, but most of those people aren't going to transact. Like most people, if you're selling like 50,000 pairs of Nike Dunks
Hmm.
and you have 3 million people show up, most people fail to get those things. And the way that Shopify is paid for means that they're not strongly incentivized to handle traffic that doesn't
Mm,
convert. So
yeah.
you see them not really spending a ton of time trying to get rid of bots, trying to get rid of bad actors, and trying to make sure that they don't, add a queue where they didn't need to.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on as a guest is because I found that, we're not here to talk just about tickets. We're here to talk to entrepreneurs who are building companies. And we do have a lot of entrepreneurs who are in the e-commerce space. And I wanted to talk about like how these early stage startups that are getting into e-commerce and are doing social media where today they could get 1,000, 2,000, a million orders, how they could use a system to help them facilitate all of these risks versus trying to use a Shopify to fill all of these orders. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think especially for the up and comers, the people who are small and growing quickly, I think the
Mm-hmm.
drop model, using scarcity, is a great way to break through. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's plenty of people who have an audience who have an interesting narrative, and being able to tie that together with something like a drop, I think really goes beyond just a kind of boring catalog experience. There was
Mm-hmm.
a soap brand here in LA called Dr. Squatch who did a collaboration with Sydney Sweeney, where it was Sydney Sweeney's bathwater infused soap, which is a completely bizarre thing to do. It's such a strange collaboration to do, but it's kind of interesting and weird and spiky, and that causes a ton of traffic to your site, a ton of interest in the brand going forward. So I think
Yeah.
those kind of moments really help. And I think scarcity does a couple of things that really help people at that scale, which is you can really constrain how many of a thing you have to produce. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's 10, maybe it's 100 of this very niche, very special item. And then you can, add your audience, your narrative, your storytelling behind it to build that intrigue on social media and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can run a process through that and you can continue the process after that happens. And I think that's a really interesting and good model for people to go after, especially with the tooling that's now available on social media.
I mean, there are like if you look at like Kylie Cosmetics when she first launched her site broke, right? And then people were like, what the heck? And then
Yeah.
oversold or sold out. People didn't get what they wanted. It was complete chaos, right? So how does your tool help like the e-commerce space with things, problems like that?
Yeah, so you would set up the entire experience through Fanfare. So
Okay.
you can add your product if you have a piece of merch or you have something that you want to get out into the world, add it through Fanfare. And
Mm-hmm.
then we can orchestrate that whole thing from your social media posts where you post your
Wow.
wait list through to actually people click, they go into a Fanfare powered page where they can transact, and then everything is managed through us and we don't fall over. We make sure we
Yeah.
remove the bots, the bad actors, and so on. And you didn't have to go through the process of, painfully setting up a store just for that
Yeah.
one item. You can just create these experiences as you want. So I think that's how we can help people who have that ability to generate a ton of traffic
Yeah.
online and don't want to manage a whole odious process. And like you say, there's a flip side of this, which is when it fails, you've built people's anticipation now,
Yeah.
and which means they're extra annoyed when that happens, and they're probably already on social media, so you're probably going
Yeah.
to get dragged, which is what we see. So like you have to make sure that you're ready and prepared when that traffic comes, because you can squander that moment. You can definitely
Yeah.
sour people to the brand just by having a bad experience.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to piss off your potential customers. But I love that like you sort of take that on. I think especially for like early stage founders who are just setting up a Shopify, who might have something very niche that they're going to get a lot of traffic for. Like this sounds like a no-brainer. Like, I think one of the hardest things in being an entrepreneur is there's so much you have to do and so much you have to figure out. So if you
Mhm.
can like you know, let someone else take care of this, which could be a big problem if you try to do it yourself. I think that solves a huge problem, right?
Yeah, and we see people trying to pick off things off the shelf to try and muddle it together into an experience.
Mm,
Like my wait list comes from over here. I'm going to grab my VIP list from over here. I'm going to try and stitch it together. That's
mm,
painful. Like it takes a long
yeah,
time. There's no real assurances that when this goes live, it's going to actually work all
yeah,
together. And yeah, I feel myself in my own business wanting to alleviate the pain of
yeah,
orchestrating certain things that are not core to our business. And I think that's
yeah,
true of everyone else. If you can have something else kind of, you hit play, you know it's going to work and you trust that it's going to stay up and do the right thing, it
yeah.
just takes an enormous like mental burden away from you.
Yeah, because you already have enough on your plate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And these things usually run like sometimes off hours. Like these are going
Yeah.
live at midnight. Like you're just setting yourself up for some pain there unless you have a tool to help you out.
Yeah. So what was the highest pressure moment you've personally faced during a launch?
I mean, I think live ticketing for sure. We had some monumental moments. I would say the first time we rolled out an in real life event at Fanfare was probably the most nerve-wracking, the
Mm,
most visceral experience I've had, just because this was our baby. This was something that we created from nothing, and just to see it in real life and people going through a process and been like with the brand as they're going through that was very nerve-wracking. And that was a complex con experience a few years ago where we
yeah.
worked with some large brands. And yeah, seeing people use it was amazing. Seeing people use it and finding out things that weren't quite right and needed tweaking in that moment was
Yeah.
a very different experience. But yeah, you learn the fastest through those moments. So it was a great thing.
When everything is melting down in real time, how do you decide what to prioritize in your business?
I mean, I think when things are melting down in real time, I really think I mean, you kind of need to step back and try and evaluate, what's critical to be dealt with right now. I
Mm,
think this is true in engineering too. When you have those meltdowns at scale,
hmm
the most important thing is you get back. You get back quickly, you get back to a reasonable, even keel, and the same with the business. Like it doesn't matter going into the dissecting what happened, how like you can do that later. The most important thing is you get back up and running, you communicate with your customers, you get to an even keel as quickly as possible, and then reflect. I've definitely seen
mm,
people engineering and business kind of go into that reflective mode of like, was it me? What could we have done? Like whilst the service is still down, like
hmm
that's not where you should be spending your time.
What was it like going from like big tech companies like Salesforce that you mentioned you were at to going and building your own tech product to help other companies? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I kind of did a Goldilocks tour of company sizes. So I did very small, then onto Salesforce, then Optimizely was kind of medium size.
Hmm
And I'd say the good thing and the pro and the con is a large company, there's always a kind of tried and tested way of doing things. There's always a team that can help you out when you need
hmm
to do something. There's always a process that's been put in place to manage you through something. And when you start something new, none of that is there,
hmm
which is sometimes when people move from a large company to a small, they reach for something that's just not there. Like I'm
Yeah.
reaching for a process and no one's defined it yet. But that's also the positive, which is you can take what you've learned at those companies, the good and the bad, and you can create your own process. Like it's on you to roll up your sleeves and do things that maybe isn't in your wheelhouse, but is
hmm
necessary in that moment. So I think that's the biggest difference I see between large company and small company is you just often find yourself in a situation where you have to do something that is completely out of band for you, but is the most necessary thing for the business.
In those early stages of building what you built, what kept you up at night?
Many things. I think, especially in those early stages as a first-time founder, the unknown unknowns, I think, keep you awake. Like there are certain things I know I need to put in place even if I think those are going to be painful, I know what they are. It's just the things I'm going to uncover along the way, I think are the most nerve-wracking and I felt the most nervous for.
Mm,
And I mean, I think the way that I tried to solve for that was find people who've been through this, find people who can help me like shine a light on those unknown unknowns. So even if it's painful, even if they shine something and I realize there's maybe a month's worth of work in something and it's going to be painful, at least I know about it now. So I
hmm
think that's really important. Just tap your network, find people who've been through it multiple times. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to. follow everything that people say, but just at least being aware of stuff that's coming is really helpful.
What leadership mistakes did you have to unlearn after a public failure?
I'm thinking back to times in my career where I've fallen down and I've had to pick myself back up again. Um, I mean, things that I've learned through that is like I've definitely been in places that the environment's not been all that supportive and positive.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think knowing that you should like reflect on what happened, what did you do, like what information did you have at the time that influenced your decision making, and going back, what would have changed your course, or was there anything
Mm,
that could have changed your course? And learning from that, like if there was something that you avoided that you shouldn't have, like you should reflect on that and realize what caused that and try and change it. I think often people just get all this kind of negative feedback and they just absorb all of it. They kind of take all of it on. And I think it's important to kind of pull out the strands that are helpful, the things that, if I went back, I would change.
hmm.
If I had the same information, I should have made this decision differently. I think
Yeah.
those are the important things. Because especially when you're starting something, failures happen almost on a daily basis. Like
Yeah.
there are like small and large, it's part of it. You're just going to have to
Yeah.
adjust. And it's important to just understand how you process it and
Hmm.
how you bounce back from it as quickly as possible and what you can take from it. And, often I think people take on everything, take on too
Yeah.
much, and it's hard to keep going, I think, when you're just constantly facing failure and just absorbing all of the pain.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like failure, I feel like that's how you learn. But failure in business has one aspect to it. How did some of the failures affect your personal life?
I mean, I think I'm definitely someone who will stew on a
Oh,
thing. So so
that's not good.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's my kind of English nature to like push some of that down. So outwardly,
Okay.
I'll be cheery and happy, and inside there's some stewing happening. So yeah, it's been important for me to understand how I get myself out of that as quickly as possible.
Mm,
And it's sometimes really unconventional things. It's different, I think, for each person. Like
mm-hmm.
I'm in LA, which is historically notoriously bad for traffic, but I'll often find just jumping in my car and going for a drive is enough for me to kind of break out of a negative spiral. And I,
Mm,
I think it's different for everyone, and you shouldn't necessarily follow the advice of people that you see online, like maybe going for a run is your thing, going for a
mm-hmm.
walk around the block, going for a drive. But just find that thing that gets you clear of the stewing as quickly as
Yeah.
possible, because you can waste an enormous amount of time just obsessing over a thing and not moving forward.
So you're not giving particular advice on what to do, but you're saying don't stew on it, but find something to do.
Yeah, find something that, like I say, just works for you. Like
Yeah.
playing Mario Kart or like just doing anything that works for you is the most important thing in that moment. Even if it
Mm-hmm.
feels like I think when people are, working long hours and they're working incredibly hard on a thing, they'll often feel like stepping away from their desk to go for a drive is like a terrible thing to do. Like, I haven't got time
Mm,
to do this. But it's
yeah.
the most important thing you can do, because otherwise you're just going to be at like 50% or 25% for days potentially.
Yeah.
So do whatever it takes to just get yourself in a good headspace so you can return and be productive again.
Yeah. Mine is sleeping, making sure like sleep is non-negotiable for me. And like
Mm.
if I don't get 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night, I'm miserable. So I'm like my 8 hours and I track it to make sure that I do. And when I don't, for whatever reason I don't, I make it up on the weekend.
Yeah, I definitely, that's another thing. Like sleep, exercise are non-negotiables. Like that, I
Yeah.
I just don't. perform very well if I just have very limited sleep. And that sometimes come out of like a long session that's meant that I've just not had any sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I know what that's going to do to me. I know that I'm just going to kind of get rat hole on things and
Yeah.
not be able to step back. And it's important for me to rest.
So building fanfare meant challenging legacy players. What did you underestimate about trying to change that industry?
I mean, I think whenever you have something like this, there's always more complexity than you initially think. There's
Mm,
always some weird and wonderful way that people work, and the differences in the way that different brands and retailers will work will be surprising. Um, and that's been true in ecom. It was true in ticketing. One of our mottos, one of our values at Rival, the ticketing company I was at, was respect the problem and solve it simply. It's not rushing in, believing that you know everything, trying to rush it to a solution and not really understanding the customer needs. And
mm,
that was definitely true in ecom too. And it's surprising. Like whenever we speak to brands, there's always something that we uncover. Um,
mm-hmm.
but I think that's a healthy thing for us.
Yeah.
I think the state that we're at, I think it's healthy. But yeah, it's it's not a surprise that it was a surprise, but every phone call there is like a mini surprise in there somewhere.
So what surprised you the most?
I think we spoke to a brand a while ago. It was a brand called Mischief, and they came from a world of they were incredibly good at creating campaigns that got people, retailers noticed. So
Mm-hmm.
they decided to create their own brand to do it. Um, but some of the tactics I think are a little eyebrow raising. And some of the conversations we had with them about the kinds of campaigns that they were running and what had happened in the past when they ran some
Mm,
of those campaigns with some of the traditional vendors, that was surprising to me. Uh, just incredibly effective at what they do,
mm-hmm.
incredibly good at getting eyeballs onto their products and onto their brand. And often that came with just some surprising results from the vendors
Mm-hmm.
that they were using. So um, I'm trying to think how much I can say on
Yeah.
this particular thing. So they did like a cease and desist World Cup Grand Prix, sorry, cease and desist Grand Prix. So they had five T-shirts they put out into the world that had some very litigious brand on it. So
Mm,
Disney, Subway, whatever. And the competition was if you picked the T-shirt for which the company would send a cease and desist to them first. So if it was Disney that sent the cease and desist first, you got a free hat.
oh, wow. Okay.
But it meant that they almost certainly were going to get five cease and desists from very large brands, which, as you can imagine, as a vendor, receiving
Yeah.
those was probably a little hair
Scary.
raising.
Yeah.
Exactly. So really interesting campaign, like fun, interesting, spiky, but I think from the vendor's perspective, unexpected to get five cease and
Yeah.
desists,
Yeah.
probably on the same day. But yeah, that was amazing. That was amazing to hear.
Yeah. So, what does leading in high pressure environments cost you emotionally?
I actually see it as a good thing. Like it's pretty hard, I think, at this point to disrupt me too much. Like I've been
Okay.
through enough of those moments where there's still some gallows humor there. There's still some, we're gonna get through this no matter what. Like we just need to like hunker down and get through this. So I feel like it's affected me positively. Like
Mm,
it's kind of allowed me to not care less, but like deal with those moments more productively than probably
mm,
I did 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There's no kind of obsessing over that moment. There's just kind of wanting to serve whoever I'm serving and get through it in the best way we can and the best way the team can too, because
yeah.
the team is often going through a lot in those
Panicking.
moments. And yeah, and I think I remember a boss that I worked with at Optimizely, actually. We had a moment where things fell over and we
Mm-hmm.
had a kind of reflection on that. And there was definitely some concern from the team, this feeling like they didn't want to push out anything going forward because when they did it the last time, it
Mm,
came with this pain. So there was kind of atrophy and just kind of this feeling of like the momentum had just ceased.
yeah.
And I remember is this guy Bill Press, amazing leader that I worked with, just kind of shepherded us through that moment and sat us down and really tried to unpick where the fear was coming from, separating just fear for fear's sake from fear of something specific, and then like really
Mm-hmm.
trying to fix those specific things. And once we went through that process, people felt comfortable rolling out again, and really nothing much had changed. Just kind of the mindset around releasing things had changed.
Yeah. Panicking or like when a leader panics, it has a ripple effect and you don't get anything done when everyone's panicking.
Yeah, people don't make good choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially on the software side, like when these moments
Yeah.
happen, it's often like huge number of people involved. And the communication when people are, when people are spiking like that and people are fearful, like it just, people hold stuff back that they shouldn't. People maybe,
Yeah.
blurt things out and try and like point fingers in those moments. And it really does not help you get to a situation where everything is back to normal again.
Yeah, you definitely have to learn how to stay calm as a leader. Well,
Absolutely.
Michael, that we're coming up on time, but before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. For founders preparing for a major launch, what is the one system they should build before they scale demand?
I think about this as a longer term thing. Like
Mm,
even if you build a viral moment, you have a very successful moment, you need to think about how you would follow that up because even the most successful campaign, that attention that you get is still fleeting. And it's
mm-hmm,
important that you think about what it is we're going to follow up with next and when and how often are we going to do these things and how are we going to continue on. We definitely see brands that hit their moment and they're just
mm-hmm.
not ready and they don't know what to do next and then they kind of dwindle into obscurity again. And it's yeah, I think it's important to just kind of have a plan for what to do next.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was very insightful.
Yeah, great to meet you.
I want to thank Michael for joining me today. High pressure moments don't expose your brand. They expose your systems, and systems are a leadership decision. Founders don't rise to the occasion, they fall to the level of their preparation. If your infrastructure cannot handle success, growth becomes self sabotage. Before your next launch, stress test your systems like your reputation depends on it, because it does. And that's a wrap. Thank you for joining me on this journey of learning and growth. If this episode resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building through a challenge right now. You can also connect with us on social media and be part of a community that believes resilience is the real advantage. Remember, growth isn't linear, success isn't guaranteed, and setbacks are part of the process. What matters is how you execute. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.